Ladies and gentlemen, big terror news.
Hey, kia ora koutou e te whānau. Welcome to another episode of Big Hairy News. Kia ora Chewy, how are you, sir?
Kia ora, Pat. I am good.
There's lots going on tonight, lots and lots and lots, and we normally do whānau our notices first thing in the evening, so we won't be doing that this evening, but a little bit of a hint. We've got some notices coming up for you, which are pretty exciting. And Chewy, I don't know, I haven't told you much about this other than the show notes. I am going to have you agree with a avowed and confirmed Nazi tonight. You will be, I'm in the same camp as him.
Well, no, not if I'm in the same camp. The only way you can get me to agree with a Nazi, Pat, is if the question is, should I die in a ditch full of diesel?
Well, we will see if I'm right or you are right. I bet my little wager that a bunch of people out there watching right now will say at the end of the clip I'm going to play from an avowed and confirmed Nazi, I agree with him. Now, you may agree with him for different reasons. Fine, I get it, but that's my challenge for the night, to see if we can, you know, those Nazis have had it too hard for too long, Chewy. Let's try and get alongside them and, you know, greenwash their attitudes.
No. Follow your leader.
And tonight as well, we're going to have a look at Mahmoud Khalil. Most of you guys watching, because of the world we live in, will know the story. Green card holder in the US, married to a US citizen, just picked up off the street because he thinks Palestinians should not be bombed out of all existence. Zateo this weekend released some footage of him actually being arrested. That's come out. So we've got some of that for you. But also I want to talk about the hypocrisy on the right and their screaming and running away from free speech. Whereas 12 months ago, this is in America, obviously, it was only about free speech, although they say what they want. Even the most offensive things in the world, you can say what you want. And some of the kings and queens of the free speech fraternity in America, looking in their rear vision mirror as free speech disappears about a kilometre behind them. And also a little bit of David Seymour on Q&A. Q&A was interesting in the weekend, actually, because, you know, maybe Jack's got a bit of baby brain. It was okay, but he had that guy doing the tour at the moment for the Free Speech Union. A lot of people weren't that happy with the conversation he had with him, whatever his name is, James something or other. And old Davy boy, David Seymour, he didn't seem to get the usual Jack Tame, hey-ho. So we'll have a look at a couple of things. Speaking of that dude who's doing that tour around New Zealand, the quote-unquote free speech tour, Byron's written a piece, and we may have him on through the week to talk about that. So tonight we're actually talking a bit about free speech, but it's to do with Mahmoud Khalil. And then later in the week, it might be tomorrow, might be Wednesday, talking to Byron about more free speech stuff. So that's a bit of a theme for the week. Everyone well? Are you all back? Everyone's good? Why is Pat's nose so red? Really?
It's St. Patrick's Day. That's why.
St. Patrick's Day. Okay, we won't do this.
You've been on the piss.
On the terps. We won't do this, but I did have a chat with someone today, because I do always think it's ironic that a generation who is so very keen not to appropriate other cultures, like not to do that, all of a sudden everyone's Irish today. And my culture is drunken on the street. Go for it. St. Party, he's a good lad.
The good students of Dunedin taking this solemn commemorative day to, I believe, barbecue a wallaby on the side of the street.
I heard that.
There
was a couch fire, and someone threw a wallaby into like. Hang on, stop, Chewie, stop. Because someone said that to me a day in my te reo class, and I was like, "Hang on, what do you mean wallaby?" And they were like a real wallaby, like an animal, not like a stuffed wallaby. they threw it into I'm assuming it jumped out straight away because it's a wallaby, but a couch fire is bizarre story.
Apparently the wallaby was dead, but certainly the first headline that I saw didn't mention that, and it was just like wallaby burned at St. Patrick's Day, and I'm like, okay, I kind of expect some mental behaviour from students in Dunedin on St. Patrick's Day,
right?
But that was just like, has that combination of words ever been used in conjunction before?
Regan's right though. You've never done that, huh? Weird.
You never,
so,
never. Oh, look, there's a fire. I've got a wallaby in my boot.
All right. Now we're gonna get back to housekeeping and stuff later on. News about shop stuff, news about Patreon, a bunch of stuff that'll all come up shortly. And my promise to you that you will be agreeing with a Nazi before the end of the show, for different reasons, but we've got it. But let's kick it off tonight. I know that's what you're all here to see. The leader of the opposition, it is Christopher Hipkins. Chris Hipkins joins us. Chris, good evening to you.
Evening. How are you guys going?
Good. With that hair sitting on your head, am I guessing it's either Scottish or Irish? Which camp are you in?
I'm at least a quarter Scottish. So
Yeah.
my dad's mum was a migrant from Scotland.
Right. Yeah. So that makes sense.
The rest of the grandparents, I'm not sure. They were here a bit longer than that, but yeah, I know at least a quarter of it's Scottish.
Chris, love to talk to you this evening a bit about, you had we call it the State of the Nation, not the State of the Nation speech the other week. Yeah. Lots of headlines trying to get you to say the three letters C, G, and T. What is the reason to earmark Labor's desire to basically be talking tax at the same time you going, we're not going to talk too specifically about tax?
Yeah, I mean, I think we need to be upfront with people. We are talking about tax reform. I think New Zealanders do want to see a fairer tax system, one that doesn't result in people making a lot of money from things like capital gains, which they don't pay tax on, while people who go out and earn salary and wages pay tax on every single dollar that they earn. So I think Kiwis do want to see the tax system fixed. But you can't just sort of go out there and announce, well, we're going to do it with this particular tax policy until you can answer all of the questions that will then flow from that. Where does the money go? Does it apply to this but not that? What does it apply to? What circumstances would it apply to? All of those things you actually have to work through. So we're working our way through what I think a more progressive tax policy will look like. And then, we'll be aiming to get that out this year so that people will have plenty of time, to talk about it before the election.
The main reason for tax reform, like what if you had your number one checklist reason, why do we need it?
Well, I think there's two reasons. One is we've got to be able to afford all of the things that New Zealanders want government to do. But the second is the tax system at the moment is unbalanced. If you look at the proportion of government tax take that comes from personal income tax and GST, i.e. the vast bulk of it, there's a lot of other ways that people earn money that aren't being taxed here in New Zealand, and they would be taxed if the same thing was happening in another country. So even if you just go over to Australia, if you're making a whole lot of money by buying and selling properties, then you'll actually pay tax on that in Australia.
Well, what's that tax called, Chris? What's that tax called over in Australia?
Well, that one's a capital gains tax, but it's not just a capital gains tax, because they've got stamp duty and other things like that you'll pay in Australia that you won't pay here in New Zealand as well. So their tax system is actually far more distributed. They don't put all their eggs in the personal income tax basket in the way that New Zealand does.
So we need more money for the coffers to be able to do what government should do. Does that mean that it'd be fair to assume, one should never assume, Chris, but would it be fair to assume that things like reimbursements to landlords and tax breaks that have been given by this government, totaling 14 billion and 3 billion, might be in trouble under a Labor-led government next time around?
Well, if you look at the nearly $3 billion they've given in tax breaks to landlords, that's back on the table. But of course, depending on what you do with, say, something like a capital gains tax or whatever else you might do in that area, that will determine whether we were going to revisit interest deductibility, which was the tax cut that they gave to landlords, because there's obviously an interaction between those two things.
Yeah.
In terms of personal income tax, cuts, not proposing to reverse those, but we'll be upfront about what our tax policy is around personal income taxes prior to the election. Frankly, if I was going to be doing tax cuts at the time the government were, well, first of all, I wouldn't have done them at that time because I think it was the worst possible time to do them.
Yeah.
But if they were, I wouldn't have done them the way that the current government are talking about. A tax-free zone at the lower end is actually a far more equitable way if you want to reduce tax on low-income New Zealanders. It's a far fairer way of doing it than what the government ended up coming up with. But even having said that, timing was terrible.
I agree with you. Yeah, we're not going to talk about details right now. Like we were fair with Christopher Luxon when sort of, 12 months out from the election, they didn't have it all nailed down. So we said that when you made that speech, the same sort of thing. But I'd like to try and get a vibe about, like I'm not saying, would you rule in, rule out Winston? But, the path that Winston's gone down with things like the anti-vaxxer brigade and the path that David Seymour's gone down, there's a Venn diagram. It's not quite a circle, but it's pretty close to a circle. What kind of things would you need to see, I guess in Winston, forget David, what kind of things would you need to see in him that could cause you to keep him in rather than out of the equation?
I mean, I think first of all, I said before the last election that we wouldn't work with him, and I've said since the last election that I think that position's pretty unlikely to change. That doesn't, I think people are reading quite a lot into that. The fact that I haven't just said, oh, we're just going to have exactly the same position next time around. I've said that it's unlikely to change. You never know what happens in a 3-year term, but I think it is unlikely to change. And when you look at the stuff that they're doing around attacking trans people, attacking any diversity and inclusion stuff, they were a huge blockage on anything around reforming the tax system. We had that conversation. They blocked all of that when we were in government with them. I don't think any of us particularly want to go down that road again. It is MMP, so you do have to kind of see how things unfold. But I think it's pretty unlikely that position's going to change.
Citizen Gold has come up with a perfect slogan for National Party. You might want to pass this on to Christopher if you see him, Chris. He says timing was terrible, the National Party slogan. So there you go. There's one for you, Mr. Luxon, if you're watching.
I think one of the things that's really funny about these guys is they seem to think that that it's all very hard and that they've had the hardest road of any government ever in New Zealand, and none of it was their fault, and it's all someone else's fault, and they're the good guys cleaning everything up. I don't think they realise actually. They certainly haven't had the hardest circumstances of any New Zealand government, and the media coverage that they've been getting, that they constantly complain about, actually hasn't been as negative towards them as they seem to think it is. The messes that they've made, many of them are their own fault, rather than actually ones that they can blame other people for. But they've got a culture of blame. They'd rather blame someone for the things that that they're having to clean up, rather than admit that actually they had quite a role to play in the messes that they're currently dealing with. The free school lunches debacle was entirely of their own making. The 13,000 people who lost their jobs in the building and construction sector, that's largely of their making as well. The stopping of state house builds, the stopping of school rebuilds, the stopping of hospital rebuilds, these are all decisions they made. And I know it's one of your favourite topics, but the decision to stupidly cancel the inter-island ferry replacement without any viable alternative, that's a decision that they made, that they're now dealing with the consequences of. So, they really, I think their slogan is, it's all someone else's fault. So far, I think it's sort of wearing a bit thin with people.
I think you're seeing that in the polls as well. I mean, I wasn't going to go down here. I've got another question before I throw it to Chewy, but, rumblings over the weekend about a Luxon being rolled. What are you hearing? What do you think about that?
Oh, I mean, I think people get a bit excited about that kind of stuff, frankly. I think it would be a pretty desperate move to remove, someone who's only recently become Prime Minister, only, just over a year after they got the job. I think that would be pretty desperate. Having said that, it is the National Party, and, they do like to chop and change leaders pretty frequently.
Are you saying that because you really want Luxon to be there for the next election?
Well, you might think that I couldn't possibly comment, but
I have a request, and this is based on a story that we covered last week. It's not about the story, but it's about the way politicians and political parties communicate with the public. Last week, we found out that this national government was going to break another promise about bowel cancer screening. and we were pontificating our blowhardiness about it like we do. And in the middle of the conversation, Chris, we went, gosh, I wonder how much they spend on screening. And a quick Google search says bowel screening between like 60 and 75 is somewhere between 50 and $75 million. That says to me to get it from 45 to 60 would be about the same again. Now that means because the government doesn't mention numbers, unless they're very big numbers that sound scary, we don't get a true picture of what we're talking about. Because as soon as you go, and I don't know the exact number, but if 75 million will give you bowel screening between 60 and 75, bigger population between 45 and 60, let's call it 100 million. So for 100 million more, we can get the same as Australia. At the same time, they're giving 300 million back to landlords. So what my request from you is, I want to be able to always understand the numbers you guys are talking about in the run up to the election to make sure we see, rather than a percentage or a per capita, like what the numbers are, because then we can relate it to the full budget.
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable request. I mean, I think if you look at the $3 billion that they gave in tax breaks to landlords, they could have funded the bowel screening, they could have funded the school lunches program, they could have funded a whole lot of things that they've chosen not to fund, all for less than the cost of the tax cuts they gave to landlords. In fact, if you look at something like bowel screening, they could have probably funded that, or at least they could have funded the first bit of that, probably got down to somewhere around 55, maybe even down to 50 for about the price of the tax cut they gave to the tobacco companies. What's going to improve the health of New Zealand is tax cuts for tobacco companies or bowel screening. I'd go for bowel screening every time.
Yeah, and I think I said 300 million there. Of course, I meant 3 billion. Chewy, yours, sir.
I was very excited to hear that there is obviously going to be a focus on tax reform for Labour. I guess my question is, you've tipped your hat now. You've given National and ACT a really big, long runway to go. Labour and tax again. So how are you going to combat that and talk to, I guess, middle-income earners, low-income earners, and say, hey, look, we're talking about increasing tax. It's not you.
Yeah. And look, that's one of the reasons that we're taking our time to get this right before we go out there and say exactly what it is that we're going to do, because we need to be able to answer every question that's going to be thrown our way. And we also, let's call it out for what's going to happen. There's going to be a very big, probably quite expensive campaign waged against whatever we come up with, because if let's hypothetically say it's in the capital gains tax space that we come up with a policy, all those people who don't want to pay it will flood their money into the National Party, as happened last time, and we'll see that spent on a campaign against it. So you can fully expect to see the National Party, the ACT Party, throwing big money at a campaign to undermine whatever we come up with in the tax space, and to convince New Zealanders who will never pay a cent of it that somehow this is going to disadvantage them, because that's what they're going to do. It's what they've done every other time that this has come up.
One of the things I hear Chewy saying, and Chewy says this a lot, is like when we're talking about the tax, etc., we're going to be paying more of. Chewy says, are you earning over $130,000? Then it's not going to impact you. So the messaging is so very important. And I wonder if Chloe said it in the House last week, and a guy called Gary Stevenson, or Gary's Economics from the UK, said it on Piers Morgan's show 2 weeks ago. Chewy, do you want to stand up for a bit? Show us your T-shirt. Here's an idea for you, Chris. Tax work less, tax wealth more.
I've listened to some of Gary's economics podcasts. He swears almost as much as you guys do. He's great.
That's why we like him. That's why we like him.
But the messaging, tax work less, but workers, it's not about you, tax wealth more. Like, for example, I know you're not confirming anything, but if you're putting everything on the table, like no PAYE tax under $10,000, that kind of thing, is that what you're going to be all looking at and investigating?
Well, one of the things is, something like a tax-free zone at the lower end is actually really, really expensive. It costs very, very big money to do that. We did look at doing that before the last election. You're talking big, big money there. One of the challenges around any form of wealth taxation, other than at the most arbitrary end, is it takes a while to build up before, so if the Aussies introduced a capital gains tax back in the 1980s, and they're getting quite significant money out of it now, but it took the better part of 2 or 3 decades to build up to the point where it's a significant part of the money that they're getting in. So a tax switch from something like a capital gains tax would be very, very modest in the beginning. Because it takes some time to build up before you start getting much money out of it.
So we can't talk specifics, but is there so I'm thinking there's CGT, there's wealth tax, there's death tax, there's land tax, there's all these different things that other countries do all or some of. Is there anything out of that kind of generic worldwide way of gathering tax that you already are thinking, nah, that doesn't sound like us? Like, is the tax free under 10,000, are you kind of saying that doesn't really sound like us, it's too expensive?
Oh, no, I mean, I think, in an ideal world, yeah, it's great. I personally think that at the lower end, a tax-free zone, the Australians have one, would actually be very good for low-income New Zealand workers. And the thing about it is it benefits everybody to the same amount. So if, again, as I was going to say, if you're going to reduce personal income taxes, that's where I would personally start with that. But if you look around the world at some of those other taxes, capital gains tax is very common in other countries. We're actually a bit of an international outlier in not having one. Wealth tax is very uncommon. Many of the countries that had them found that after a period of time they got rid of them because people just figure out ways of avoiding them. And so, there's those issues that you'd have to work with. Estate taxes are more common around the world, but fraught with difficulty as well. And in a country like New Zealand, you'd have lots of issues to work through around things like inheriting the family farm and all of that kind of stuff that you'd have to work through.
Yeah.
It's not an easy one. So land taxes will kind of have a form of land tax in the sense that everyone pays rates, and rates is largely, yes, there's a bit of asset value on top of it, but it's largely a land tax.
Here's a couple that I think about. I never understood why the government gives back. Well, I kind of do, but I wonder if it's time to question it. Gives back half of your donations to a charitable event, a charitable thing. So if I give $100 to World Vision, I can claim $50 back. That always seems a bit weird to me. But the other one is the religious carve out. The classic example is sanitarium not paying tax on their profits or their incomes, whichever it might be. Either of those kind of something that we can throw on the table?
Well, I don't think there's any harm in giving people a rebate for the charitable donations, because encouraging people to make more charitable donations is a good thing. In terms of the companies like Sanitarium, I think that, I'm fully supportive of the government looking at this. I understand the current government's looking at it. I think it's long overdue. And if they can figure out a way of doing it, they'll have my full support for that. The thing we wouldn't want to have happen, though, is that genuine charities who go out there and fundraise and then apply their, 100% of what they earn for charitable purposes, I wouldn't want them to be penalised. But a company like Sanitarium, it does seem to be quite a loophole in the system there. Another one that would really set them off, but Best Start, the supposed charity who run the country's largest chain of for-profit early childhood education centres, is supposedly a charity. And that, again, seems to be a bit of a loophole in the system.
Is that the right family? I just know that they do okay, right. Okay. Yeah, makes sense. Yes, so there are those loopholes as well. I guess it always comes down to, in general, does it cost more to close the loophole than you then receive back in revenue? Which is why, remember when the COVID payments happened, it's sort of the reverse, but we just pay everybody rather than spending $1 billion trying to figure out the 3% of people who weren't due it, sort of thing. So I guess that always comes up as the financial reward for the capital investment for those things as well.
There's always a compliance cost challenge. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it, because if you believe in people paying their fair share of tax, then you have to accept that there's a compliance cost associated with that.
Yeah, just kind of a separate subject altogether. It's only because I brought up religious groups. What do you think at the moment of all the coverage and noise that old Brian Tamaki is getting and what his group's up to? Any thoughts around that?
Oh, a variety of thoughts. Clearly, he within his church, if he's interested in protecting children, then he might want to start looking a little bit closer to home. I think the thuggish sort of behaviour that we've seen around them storming into libraries, even now. I mean, alarm bells should have been ringing for everybody when Brian Tamaki was the first person to jump up and down and say that he thinks the ideas of citizens' arrests is a great idea. You can just imagine Brian Tamaki's thugs going around and saying and accusing people of breaking the law when they're simply exercising their right to be different, and using that as grounds for a supposed citizen's arrest. I mean, it's tapping into a very ugly sort of approach to politics. I believe in free speech, but that also includes the ability to, vigorously disagree with people. And I vigorously disagree with Brian Tamaki and the mob that he's whipping up. But free speech does not extend to thuggish behaviour where you're bullying, intimidating, and in fact potentially physically assaulting people.
Yeah, we wonder now as well, with this government's gang patch kind of ruling, that one of the criteria to be a gang is criminal activity. And after Destiny Church members got arrested, or as far as we know, actually, I should say alleged, and we'll find out are they now technically a criminal entity that they can go on the gang patch ban as well? Because you see them on their bikes, they certainly look similar, don't they, Chewy?
They look similar, they act similar.
It highlights the ridiculousness of the gang patch law, in the sense that a Nazi symbol was okay, but a boxing club T-shirt is not. Which is what we've had. A kid had their boxing club T-shirt taken off them because it contained some gang-related symbols, apparently. So that's not okay, but it's okay to walk around with a Nazi swastika on your front.
Chewy.
Yeah, I've got a couple of I guess smaller questions here. It's been mentioned in the chat a couple of times, but tying fines to income, is that something that's ever been looked at in New Zealand?
It's not something I've ever looked at. I think it'd probably be quite hard to enforce. So if you're talking about things like parking fines and so on, I mean, courts have the ability in many cases, if you're talking about fines associated with, offending, the courts have the ability, through sentencing, to consider someone's financial circumstances and applying a sentence. So they can do that now. Things like parking fines, I think it'd be quite hard to do that, because when you're ticketing someone's car, you don't necessarily know any details about who owns it or who was driving it at the time. So it's not something I've really looked at, but I could see that it probably be quite difficult to actually do in practice.
So I believe, I think it's Norway and Finland, maybe even Sweden, I think, that they do that for traffic offences, and I think some other offences as well.
We had a program of work on which I think the current government have stopped. That was about debt to government. So it was looking at the fact that actually you've got some quite, families of quite limited means who have quite a pile of debts to government, of which fines are only one of those components. But when you add up all of the different debts they've got to government, it can often be pretty crippling. And we're not talking huge numbers of people, but for the people that we're talking about, it's a big thing. So there was some work looking at how we might be able to kind of consolidate some of that and get some opportunity for these people to make a fresh start in some circumstances, rather than constantly having the weight of government just pulling them down all the time. That was work that we had underway, and unfortunately seems to have been stopped.
Crazy. This government stopping work that was going to help, like the people with less money and stuff. That doesn't sound right, Chris. You must have that wrong, actually.
And I've got another question, kind of much bigger in scale. We're talking about tax reform, and I mean, I guess the way that I think about tax is it's the linchpin of everything, right? It's part of the reason that our housing is so cooked. It is potentially a solution to some of the big challenges we have in the future with climate change and climate adaptation. How to lower inequality, how to solve a lot of the things like child poverty that we have that just keep pestering, I guess, our society as a whole. With you looking at tax reform, is this potentially an end or the start of an end, or a view to an end of neoliberal thinking in Labour?
Oh, I mean, I think neoliberal thinking in Labour has been sort of on the way out for quite some time. Having said that, there's always going to be a limit to the amount of change you can do all at once, unless you want to adopt the sort of approach that we saw from Roger Douglas, where you just crash everything through and let everything burn. And I've never kind of believed in that approach to politics. I have believed in when you're making change in government, the goal should be to bring people along for the journey and not write off people in the way previous governments have done. So yes, I mean, I think I would like to see us get back to some basic notions of the common good, the basic notions around the economy being there to serve people rather than for people to simply be slaves to this thing called the economy. And I'd put myself far more at the Keynesian end of the economic cycle than of the economic spectrum than the neoliberal end.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Chippy, you got something you want to ask about the hospital? I can't remember what we talked about.
Oh, yes, I saw this just before we went to air, and it's about one of our favourite topics, the Dunedin Hospital kerfuffle. Are we calling it a kerfuffle?
Is
that a good name for it?
Yeah.
Yep. And we can't plant this solely at the feet of the current government, because the incident happened when Labor was at the wheel. A 74-year-old woman died in Dunedin Hospital after a surgery for broken leg was delayed repeatedly for 3 days. The review of the woman's case found that the delay was the root cause of her death from cardiac issues following a pulmonary embolism and a stroke while in surgery. This is down to Dunedin Hospital not having the surgical resources to see her in a timely manner, and she kept on getting bumped for other more serious cases. This happened in, I believe, 2021, and I think is just really illustrating the fact that as much as we want to throw shit at the current government for the state of health, it is a big problem, and it is spread out over multiple governments. So where do you go from here?
I think that's a fair observation. The current state of the health system has been made worse by the current government, but there were some very deep-seated issues within the health system beforehand. And I think this case that you're just highlighting, of course, my thoughts are with the woman who lost her life and her family, an absolutely tragic set of circumstances, highlights for us why we need to actually invest in expanding the capacity of our health system. If you think about the number of hospitals that we have now is not that much bigger than the number of hospitals we had when we had a population of 3 million people. We haven't expanded our health system, the capacity of our health system, to cope with the fact that there's now 2 million more people living in this country. And that includes the health workforce, it includes, all the hospitals, the whole works. And so we need a concerted effort to deal with that. Unfortunately, the stop-start nature of some of that is making this thing worse. So if you think about the medical workforce, for example, successive governments have not invested in the medical workforce because if you increase the number of doctors that you're training, it's sort of 7, 8, 9, 10 even years before you actually see an increase in the number of doctors in hospitals.
Yeah.
And so it's been one of those things that's been very easy just to park off to one side. And so in my brief tenure as Prime Minister, the 8 months that I had at the job, we released a plan that was going to ramp up the number of medical training places every year for the next couple of years, quite significantly, knowing full well that had we been re-elected, had we done that, it would be another government some way a long way down the track that would actually be able to sort of see the benefits from that. But that's the sort of thinking around health that we've just got to do. We've got to get past this idea that unless I can cut the ribbon on it, I'm not interested in it, because that's why we've got an infrastructure crisis. It's why we've got a health system crisis. It's why our schools are not where they need to be. We've got to start thinking beyond the 3-year parliamentary term if we're going to deal with some of the deep-seated issues that the country has.
So that means as a part of the election process, you want to be talking about the 30-year plan, the 50-year plan, and actually saying, we might not be the ones to cut the ribbon, but this is what the country needs, so we're going to start it.
But it's also about saying we're not going to stop stuff just because the other side were the ones that started it.
Yeah.
So the inter-island ferries, they didn't need to just cancel it. They could have said, oh, look, we're outraged at the fact that it's going to cost so much money, but that's the other side's fault. We're going to go ahead and finish it. Transmission Gully was half constructed when we became the government. The price blew out through the roof. We didn't turn around and say, oh, we're cancelling and it's all the other side's fault. We finished it. I just think you've got to, the stop-start nature of government spending in areas like this is just really damaging. Take state house builds. If we're being really frank, we probably need another 20,000 state houses in New Zealand. We got to the point, having a very slow start where you build up the capacity to build new state houses. We got to the point where we built about 5,000 in 2023, our last year in government. And this government have come in and basically nixed the lot, which means when there is another Labor government, which I certainly hope will be after the next election, we have to start that process again of building it up. You can't just flick a switch and go back to building 5,000 houses a year. It takes you a while to get to that point.
Do you guys have like a folder, for want of a better word, that you're keeping all these things close, and there's an election advert already written, under us 5,000 homes, under them? That, do you kind of keep a track of that as you, not you personally, Chris, but does the Labor Party keep a track of those things? Has a little folder and let's put that one in, like we joke around putting it in the divorce file. You might put it in the winning the next election file.
We certainly have quite a large file, actually. The issue is it's not a lack of material that's the problem. It's figuring out which ones to use, because there's so much of it.
If you're okay, Chippy, unless there's anything else from you directly, Chewy, there is quite a lot of people who have asked quite a lot of questions. We're not going to get to ask all of them, whānau, just so you know. So if you've done us a super chat and we don't get to ask your question, we apologise. But are you okay for 3, 4, 5 questions? All right, some of them are pretty simple. I actually want to ask Rajan's one, because that was a really interesting one. Okay, so Rajan wants to ask, Chippy, are you willing to use fast tracking to bring back policies the current government got rid of through fast tracking, like fair pay agreements?
So it's probably, rather than fast tracking, I think the word here is parliamentary urgency. And there'll be a period of parliamentary urgency after the next election, should we form the government, as we put in place the stuff that we want to see happen quickly. I think something like fair pay agreements, one of my frustrations there was we'd only just passed it, and then the government repealed it before actually seeing whether, what the benefits for it were going to be. I'm not going to guarantee that we're going to repeal everything that they have done, or that we're going to put back in place everything that they've repealed that we did. That was, I just think if we get into that cycle, the country's not going to move forward. It's just got to constantly ping pong from side to side. And I don't think that's the sort of cycle we want to get into. But for me, fair pay agreements is something that needs to be on our list of bottom lines, because paying lower income New Zealanders properly should be a goal, or making sure that low income New Zealanders are paid properly should be a goal for every government. And a market system which says that companies compete with one another by driving down the price of their wages, of their staff's wages, that's not the sort of economy that's actually working for people.
All right, here's one from NZ Random. Will Chippy fund IRD to audit tax evasion?
Absolutely. Interestingly, I actually think the current government have increased their funding in that area. I think they've worked out that their tax cuts are unaffordable, so now they're trying to figure out ways of getting more money in. And so I think they've put a bit more money into tax avoidance and tax evasion. So tax evasion, no brainer. Tax avoidance actually requires you to have a system that deals with the loopholes that people legally exploit in order to avoid paying their fair share of tax.
I've got a question. What does Christopher Luxon need to do in India? What does he need to come back from in India for you to give him a standing ovation next time he's in Parliament? Like I heard him saying that it's a success even having the meetings. I kind of go, it's good having the meetings. It's a success maybe getting a free trade agreement. Like what would he need to do or succeed or get across the line for you guys to be openly and ardently congratulatory of what he's brought back?
I do think we need to be reasonable here. India has been pretty clear that they don't want a full comprehensive free trade agreement with New Zealand. So I'll give them a bit of credit. They've actually got to the negotiating table. Having said that, the key government got to the negotiating table as well and weren't able to conclude a free trade agreement. I think if they come back with a trade agreement that doesn't involve, big New Zealand exporters like dairy, I think that is a wasted opportunity for New Zealand. So I think we should keep an open mind. I think there's probably some easy wins there. If we can get some direct flights between New Zealand and India, I think that would be great. If you think about the Indian population here in New Zealand, I think they'd love to have direct flights between the two countries. So if they can get that off the ground, quite literally, give them credit for that. I think that would be great. But let's see what they come back with. But when in our interactions with India during our time in government, they were saying that they wanted to improve the relationship between the two countries before they would kind of put all of the things on the negotiating table that we wanted to see. Now, we worked hard on improving that relationship. That work has continued under this government. If India have now said, okay, now we're willing to come to the negotiating table, that's good. But again, I wouldn't necessarily say that's all the credit of this government. I think successive governments going right back to John Key have actually worked on that.
Here's the last one from Micho. If you want to do any other questions or anything else yourself, we can wrap up after this. But I only picked this because it's Chewy's favourite word. Chippy, thought on a nationalised supermarket competitor where Citizen owns shares, like what some countries do with oil?
I think watch the space. I think a greater competition in the supermarket sector is coming. And I think the sooner the better. So I've spoken to one or two people who have got some exciting developments in train. And I think that breaking up that cosy duopoly of the supermarkets will be a very good thing for New Zealand consumers. Now, if it can be done without government involvement, even better. But if it needs government to be a partner to help make some of that happen, I think we should leave that on the table.
I think Sir Stephen Tindall at one stage was trying to buy his warehouse back, wasn't he? And I'm wondering if part of the reason he was looking at doing that was like here in Dunedin, there's a supermarket area in our warehouse. And I always wondered if Stephen Tindall's, one of his ideas was exactly that, to turn the warehouse into the warehouse and a supermarket chain as well.
Oh, absolutely. Look, I think if the warehouse sort of tried to enter into the supermarket grocery trade and struggled to do it and struggled to make it work, it's got to tell you something about the power that the current supermarket duopoly has. So if we do get a third competitor sort of poking their nose in, I think government's going to need to work really hard to make sure that they don't get pushed back out again by anti-competitive behaviour from the duopoly. So I know that there's a third party who seem to be getting close, and I'm very excited about that. And let's hope they get that over the line, and then government needs to make sure that it works.
All right. I'm pretty much wrapped up for the night, but I did see the Palms comment just coming in, and I think it's quite funny, so I'm going to use it. How about a 200% tax on Tesla vehicles? I think the world would pretty much sign up to that at the moment. We did a breakdown the other day, Chris, where whilst you guys were in, and one of the months that the rebate was there, they sold 50 Teslas a day for the month. At the moment, they're selling, like in New Zealand, 2 every 3 days. So I think both the influence of Elon overseas and also this government's apparent war on EVs has done some pretty bad things to Tesla.
Well, to be fair, they're also being overtaken by other car manufacturers who are making better cars for cheaper. Yeah, exactly. And so I've got a Hyundai Kona, and the price of those has come right down.
Nice.
And it's an awesome little car. Like, I didn't necessarily want it in the beginning. Actually, it was Jacinda who made me get it. But now I really
Hang on,
like it.
are you confirming all those conspiracy theories that she's actually a bit of a nasty bully? Is that what you're saying?
No, it's just at the time she was the Prime Minister, so she got to call the shots. And funny thing is, because I've still got an old car which I use, to tow the trailer around and stuff. And I almost feel guilty driving it now because I've become an electric car convert. I think they're amazing.
Yeah, Chewy converted. Oh, no, you didn't convert me, Chewy. Chewy certainly got me along the way. So I've got a Volkswagen now, and Chewy drives a Hyundai as well. So this is an EV space. You are safe, Chris.
We're car
This
cousins.
is a safe space for EV owners right now. No problems here. Sorry, you go to it. Totally.
I was going to say I got one last question. It's kind of harking back to the last time that you were on the show. We asked some questions about when are we going to see Chippy get a bit of mongrel, get a bit up in their grill, and you gave me an answer that really gave me pause. Of you have to be palatable for the people in the middle, the guys that would vote National or Labour. I can't get in that headspace. I don't know what those people are. But how are you going to balance talking to those people and talking to us and having a message that works for both? Because we are always going to sit there and go, no, more, harder, faster. Just turn a fire hose of money onto housing and schools and hospitals, and we want it to happen now. And then you don't want to scare those guys that aren't as plugged into these sort of conversations, that just listen to the news or read their local paper and hear that Chris Hipkins is coming for their holiday home.
Yeah, look, I totally hear you. I think you will have seen us dial up the volume a bit since the start of the year. So we said, I think last year we said that was our year of kind of listening and consolidation and reflection and all of those things. This year we have dialed up the volume a bit more in terms of criticism of the current government, in terms of talking about what a different government could look like, what the alternatives are to what they're doing. And so you'll see us ramp that up a bit more this year. And frankly, once we get into an election campaign, the gloves are off, it's all on. And so, and who knows when that might be? It might be this year, it might be later this year, you never know. Who knows what's going to happen after June?
We're going to wrap up, Chris, but I'm sorry, there's questions coming in and then sparking me to have a question. Mr. R. Soul talks about cut price public transport for disabled people, but that prompted me to think, I haven't read it yet, but I heard a headline today about the number of attacks, a number of crimes happening on public transport is going through the roof. Is like, I think about you guys and ram raids. And ram raids went up under that Labor government, and National used it as a weapon. When you hear this kind of thing about crimes going up on public transport, is that going to be something we hear from you guys this week? Because this is under their lot. This is nothing they can tie to the last government, because it's a new thing for a new government.
Yeah, yes and no. And what I'd say about crime is the National Party, the parties of the right, they love to make people scared and use that fear as a political weapon. Yeah. And we tend to not to do that on the left. And I'm quite proud of the fact that we don't do that. They scaremonger, they make everybody feel like they have to lock themselves up at home because the world's going to a hell in a handcart when it's not. And we don't engage in that kind of politics. And I think that's morally, that's the right thing to do. And answer to the question that was on the screen there, yeah, we do, and I can't make it specific, but we do want to see support for disabled people increased, and this government have been decreasing it. But also more broadly, want to make public transport much cheaper and much more broadly available, because and a cost of living crisis is one of the ways that you can actually reduce people's costs. But also, it's better for us, all of us. We're never going to be able to pave our way through, to away from congestion. Worldwide examples will show you that the more roads you put in, the more congestion you end up with. You actually need to have mass rapid transit. You need to have good public transport. It needs to be cheap, needs to be convenient, and that's what we've got to aim for as a country.
I mean, it's never going to happen in Dunedin. I'm Googling while I'm talking to you, but I think I heard in Denmark, it'll be Denmark or Amsterdam or something like that, 63 or 64% of people are now bicycling every day, up from 53%, 20 years ago, whenever the last survey was. So they have a culture of it, though, so it works. Yeah. I'm a bit disappointed you didn't say the word arsehole. You didn't address Mr. Arsehole by his name, Chippy, but we'll let that slide. And can I say, for someone who doesn't want to talk about it, you said the word capital gains tax quite a lot tonight.
There's a little bit of prompting in there, though.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
Hey, no.
Thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate the time. Yeah, it's an interesting time in politics because it feels like so much of the world is a dumpster fire. And so much of the news headlines we see, like we did a story last week, Chris, and I'm chasing it for an interview this week, that potentially beneficiaries who are in hospital for more than 13 weeks are going to have their benefits cut to $55 a week. It just seems that so many news stories coming out at the moment are hard, especially on the vulnerable. And, I hope that those of us on the left, and we don't hide our bias, which is where empathy hopefully lives, figures out a way to do society better for everyone, but trickling up rather than the neoliberal trickling down, because the community is only as strong as its weakest link. And I think that's
totally agree with you. And look, if you believe in the common good and you believe that we're all in this together, the world can feel pretty overwhelming at the moment. And if you're in that zone, I guess my advice to you will be look for the helpers. When you look around, you'll see plenty of them out there. That should give you the energy to keep going. Look for the people who are helping, because they are everywhere. It's the people making noise and creating friction that get all the news headlines, but actually the people who are helping are the people who we should be celebrating.
Yeah. Awesome to speak to you tonight, Chris. Thanks so much for giving us more time than you should have. We didn't deserve 49 minutes, but we're thankful you gave it to us. And we'll catch up again super soon, yeah?
Good as gold. Yeah, always great fun.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks,
Cheers.
mate.
Leader of the opposition, Chris Hipkins. Chewy, we've got, I think, 450,000 super chats to go through. I will apologise in advance if we didn't get to your question, but let's get to them. Do you want to rip through?
Yeah, yep. So Frosty here asks, what are Chippy's thoughts on the Opportunities Party, specifically regarding their views on a UBI and a land value tax? I think universal basic income, you could kind of say that's that tax-free threshold potentially.
Yeah, 10,000.
It's another wording for it, I would imagine. But yeah, hopefully we got close enough to the answer for that question for you there. As far as top goes, they've been very quiet.
They're not. They since was it Raf, wasn't it? Raf Mungie. I don't reckon you'll hear from them again. I mean, wasn't Kim.com behind them for a while or something? They joined up with a digital company or whatever it was. But I just look. I think top is a really interesting idea, but it doesn't have the ability to get to either a seat or the 5%. And I hate saying this because I know everything's got to start somewhere. I mean, look at David Seymour. He was always a 0.2% party, and now there's what? Probably unlucky 13, but it just feels like top hasn't done it yet, and I don't see how they will. At least Seymour was in government or in Parliament because National gifted him a seat.
I still think in the early days of top, if Gareth Morgan had just stayed the fuck out of it and kept his mouth shut, they'd be there.
Yeah,
I believe that they would have been in Parliament at that stage. Have we heard what David Parker's revenue ideas are? No, we haven't. Tax policy, CGT versus GST, tax greed, not Greens.
I was going to get cheeky. I actually brought them up, the Greens tax policy, and I was going to ask him about all of those things down the list and go, oh, interesting. Maybe you should have a chat with Chloe about that. Anyway, I didn't.
Just read her homework. It's fine. The POM tax-free threshold, capital gains tax, and a super tax for corporate price gouges. I would say a super tax for that Mowbray dick. Just for him. Specifically, A, because of the amount of money he's apparently got, and B, because he's such a prick and he deserves it. That'd be a way to do taxation, wouldn't it? Don't be a cunt. Here comes the tax. Is there any way to reduce land banking with or without tax? Look, I think Gary Economics has covered this. Like, lots of people have ideas around how to reduce inequality or get the rich to stop being such pricks. But it all comes back to the fact that tax is the most simple tool that we have. And I
think Gary said on that Piers Morgan show, it has to start with tax. I think that's a direct quote. It has to start with tax.
It absolutely is. And because it's worked, because we can point historically to places where we've gone, oh, the standard of living is huge and we've been able to do these great big things. It's when we were taxing the rich a lot and they still made money,
Yeah.
and we built hospitals, and we built dams, and we built great big projects that we could never do now. Destiny Church needs to be taxed out the wazoo. Absolutely.
Technical term. The wazoo or the cloaca. They're the two technical terms.
I did ask that question for the Falconer. I think it's great. I read stories about people in Sweden getting enormous speeding tickets. It's great. How about regulating the price of things? No point income going up or tax breaks when the bank, the landlord, the supermarket, petrol station, energy company can all pillage the gains and leave us worse off. Regulating prices. That's a big question.
I think, by the way,
should
I
talk
just
to an economist about that.
I think I just lost a chat, by the way, so someone's going to have a miss out, and I do apologise because I pushed the star rather than the next. XLDS says any chance of giving the Commerce Commission teeth to break up monopolies that should be help bringing the price down. I guess that's what he's talking about, supermarkets. Mr. Arvid's proud of you lads and chat tonight. Some excellent questions. Falconer says, how is the same $150 speeding fine to someone earning $55,000 and a person earning $250,000 fair? It really hurts the poor and no punishment for the rich. I haven't said this, but I'll just be blunt. The problem with tying in, fines and stuff to income is those at the very top with accountants will still not pay anything because their income on paper will be, I pay myself $1 a year, and then they'll pay nothing in fines. That's the gap in that logic. Now there could be a way around it, but that's the problem. So, just saying.
Tie the fines to the income of the accountant.
There you go. XLDR, will renationalisation be on for, say, energy? Yeah, I think we've only once really ever seen renationalisation, and that's with the when Helen Clark brought the railways back. Feels more difficult kind of buying back 49% of whatever power company or 49% of Air New Zealand, but yeah, I don't know. Anything? Late fee has had to step out for a Guinness. St. Patrick. Kai Tuhi. Chippy, will you commit to asking the public about what they want for tax reform and how? Public town halls. I like the idea of public town halls. Obviously, sorry. But the thing that I often think, and this is going to sound really dismissive, is we don't know anything. Because normally a decision made on the 9th floor, there's 7 other tentacles that has to go to other places to get to that point. And I think it's great. That's why people who think you should, not that we're saying this tonight, but should rule by referendum don't have a clue, because sometimes the most popular thing to do is not the right thing to do. Equally, sometimes the most unpopular thing to do is the only thing you can do. So ideas, I'm sure they'll do ideas. I'm sure they'll do hearing from. I'm sure they'll come on things like this. And
they'll be talking to their membership. They'll be talking to their membership.
Yeah, 100%. It's in the ballot. To Chippy, will you increase the Serious Fraud Office budget to match the MSD fraud investigation budget at 3 times?
Yes.
Sorry, we've missed your question. Yeah, the mongrel, says Arvids, and the danger of mouse. I am all for the idea of EVs, but don't believe we have the appropriate battery technology.
Don't set me off.
Set me off. My little car does 600 kilometers around town. I mean, I don't really know what else you want than that around town. And
here's the comparison. His little car, which is what year is yours?
24, I think.
Yours is 2024.
Might be 23.
Mine's a 2018. Right? So what's that? 4 years of technology advancement? Our car's brand new would have been the same price. Mine does 200.
Yeah, so
there's the advancement in technology. A car's lithium battery is 96% recyclable.
And also the solid state batteries that are coming, they're going to be 1,000-kilometer range like that. Your average EV will be. Because look, I'll tell you what, danger of mouse, I'm in the same boat, aren't I, Chewy? You can testify to this. I was like, no, I'm going to just wait for the range to get there. And once the range is more than pretty much most, if not all, but most petrol tanks, then what's your problem? How often do I need 600 Ks? Like once in a marriage when I'm going on honeymoon to Waitangi? Other than that, how often do you need 600 Ks? Me and Chewy drove down to Invercargill to do the teachers union, and you stopped once and I drove all the way, and we got there probably 20 minutes longer than each other. So, whatever. Anyway, hey, we're going to keep trucking because that was a great long conversation, and I do want to obviously share with the whānau some pretty exciting news that some have probably already...
That chat with Chippy was in the BHN tradition of, I'll give you 20 minutes.
20 minutes. Yeah. 100%.
50 minutes? Yeah. Okay, cool.
Yeah, I'll give you 20. Yep. Okay, as you've probably already picked up, whānau, we have some new merch out tonight. Both Chewy and myself are wearing it. The merch store is open. The regular merch is there. The Chewy Fufu, the Nikki Nobo, it's the BHN hoodies and t-shirts, the Buffer hoodies and t-shirts, and the new brand which we've been promising you, the Tax Work Less, Tax Wealth More. There is a black one with white print, which is what I'm wearing, and there is a white one with black print. Now I have to tell you that our patrons, our wonderful patrons, they learnt about it in the weekend. See, look, there's a little
secrets.
There's a little what's it called, Chewy? I'm trying to say there's a little advance warning. There you go. So they knew about it, and so they got first access to them. It's a limited run. It's not a tiny run, but it's a limited run. And I looked yesterday, I looked before I came on, and I'm pretty sure, for example, the large black t-shirts, there may only be one left because people have got in. Now, this is not one of those, it's only one run and it'll never be back. But most of these, there's maybe 3 or 4 of, because we've already probably sold a quarter of them. So those sizes, most of them, there's 3 or 4 of. I know there's one black large t-shirt because I had a look. XL, 2XL, 3XL. I've been talking to some people who want bigger sizes, and that we can probably do something for you. And but just contact us about that, because it's to do bigger than 3XL becomes problematic financially. So, well, not for us, for you, basically. Sorry about that, but just being blunt. But we can do them, but it's more one-on-one to order than anything else. Yeah, so there you go. So the patrons got in there early. You can see that they're here. And for everyone else, well, you could have got them in the weekend, but you may not have known they were there. But now you know they are there. There is a limited run of them. There are stickers coming. There will be stickers by the end of the week. And remember, everybody who purchases a t-shirt, a hoodie, or some of the sticker packs, which are down here, the multi-packs, will also get We Are the Grassroots stickers thrown for free as well. And that's right through this month. Okay, Chewy. That's just a quick one. I would normally milk that for a bit more and try and you should hurry up, but we haven't got time to milk it tonight, so we'll just. Well, here's the black one, by the way. I'll stand up so you can see it. There we go. There's the black.
You missed all of my modelling while you were just talking about the t-shirts. I was showing it off.
And I think the black one's a bit more popular at the moment. So if you're interested in black, you probably need to be a bit quicker as well than the whites. But don't panic if they sell out, because we'll be getting them back within weeks, like if they all sell out, I'll order straight away and get some more t-shirts back in. Okay, Chewy, let's get on to some of our favorite people in the world by David Seymour.
Blah.
David Seymour was on Q&A in the weekend. We're only going to have a look at a little bit of the conversation. A lot of people thinking old man Jack might still be on paternity leave up here a little bit. It was a bit of a lighter weight than usual. David Seymour's overall vibe was, and I am being a bit facetious here, was, it's pretty good there's been troubles with the lunches because it builds character. I am being a bit facetious, but that does come out in this, along with this thing that he actually won't admit, because he can't admit how terrible this rollout has been.
You have been accused by the opposition of deliberately tanking the school lunch program because you fundamentally oppose the policy to begin with. Are you?
No.
I have a question for you as well, right? So we're all clear what was just said. Fundamentally opposing this. This is policy. This is legislation that David Seymour fundamentally opposes. That means he doesn't think it should exist. That means if he had his way, he'd strike a line through it. So here's my question. What kind of fucking leadership does it show of Christopher Luxon to put the guy who wants to get rid of something in charge of something? Like, what does that say about Luxon's leadership? That the person who wants to see the arse end of this thing, the back of this thing, is now the person who's running it. I mean, there's 2 logical conclusions. The first is Luxon's not very good at this. The second is Luxon wants involvement in actually getting rid of the thing overall. There are only 2 conclusions, right? Luxon doesn't know what he's doing, or Luxon wants to see it fail. There is no other conclusion you can come to from putting the man who wants to see the end of school lunches in charge of school lunches.
Yeah. It's just dumb.
And if that was truly my view, then I wouldn't have stood up week after week and solved problems as they've arrived and defended
He doesn't seem to think it's a problem that there's been problems week after week. He's like, we'll solve them.
progress that we're making. So I think, frankly, it shows an opposition that's not quite trying to present itself as an alternative government, but just take pot shots. And look, I've been in opposition too. I can give them free advice, but I doubt they'll take it. If you look at what's actually happened, we've adopted a system that was unsustainable. Budgets are made in 4-year cycles. Labor's budget is that.
Bullshit, bullshit,
Bullshit.
bullshit, bullshit, bullshit,
That's a bald-faced lie.
So
Like,
that means anything
you
that
can't-
this government sets the budget for that runs out at the end of next year, the next government can go in and go, they didn't leave it. It's because you need to refund it. Gets to the end of its funding and then it gets refunded. It's the government doesn't come in and go, here's the budget for the next 40 years. They go, here's the budget for the next 2 or 3 years, whatever. The next government comes in, they then either choose to refund it, as in to fund it again, not to give the money back, to refund it, to fund it again, or they choose to cut it. And this is the side they took. Sorry, Troy.
It's just this fiscal cliff bullshit again.
Yeah.
It's a government, like the previous government, can't lock the next government into a line of funding. They just can't do it. They'd be held to pay. It's like, oh, we're sorry, we can't stop this thing that we're just massively opposed to because somebody's locked the keys away. It's dumb. And he knows that. And he's just repeated it. And unfortunately, this is what you're talking about, Pat. Jack lets him away with it.
Yeah, it doesn't push back.
They went out of government, did not have any money for the school lunch program in 2025, 2026 or any year subsequent. So the first thing we needed to do was find $340 million, either extra tax, cut spending $340 million elsewhere.
Or not give $3 billion to landlords? Because I don't know about your math, Shuey, but I think $3 billion bigger number than 340 million. So what he's saying is we didn't have the money and there wasn't any to spare. What about that $3 billion to landlords, Mr. Seymour? Oh, that was already accounted for.
Or find a way to do this more efficiently. What we've done is we've basically halved the cost by doing it more efficiently. And yes, there's been problems, and we've been very upfront about that. What I think is really interesting is that it's shown two sides of New Zealand. One is to point out at every opportunity, this is terrible, this is wrong, it's a conspiracy, he's trying to deliberately sabotage it.
That's one side. And the other side of society is David Seymour. So one side thinks all that, and the other side is David Seymour.
The other is, you know what, it's not what happens to you in life, it's how you deal with it. And each time there's been a problem, we've been upfront, we've solved it, and it's kept getting better.
There have been a lot of problems.
So that's what I was saying. That's the whole, it builds character and it gets more overt than that about building character. Jack Tame's about to go into a bit of a conversation with how bad this really is. So he lists off some of the things. So we'll just keep trucking into that.
Meals have failed to be delivered or have turned up late, interrupting tens of thousands or probably hundreds of thousands of learning hours. Teachers have been forced to scramble and buy pizzas and pies for their students. We've seen the torrent of images of totally unappealing meals, lunches described by students as resembling dog food. Meals with ham have been delivered to kids with halal diets. There have been meals with melted plastic in them, meals that are frozen solid, meals so hot they left one student with serious burns. If this rollout hasn't been deliberately bungled, is this the kind of delivery we should expect from a David Seymour policy?
There you go. And he's back. Great question, Jack. Great question.
Well, let me just first answer the deliberate bungled thing again. I mean, it's absolutely true that I campaigned against this policy. I don't think, as far as ACT's concerned, that it should exist, but I'm now in a coalition with 2 other parties who do want it to continue.
And they thought they'd give the person who didn't want school lunches responsibility for school lunches.
But when it comes to delivery, it's either malice or incompetence.
Yeah, well, in one of life's great ironies, the person who was opposed to the whole program is now responsible. But I'm part of a government. I do government policy to the best of my ability, and I take it very seriously. Now to go through that.
I don't know if you want to say this is the best of your ability, David, because this is not painting the ability of the person in charge of this very well. Just saying. Just saying.
Catalogue of criticisms that you just listed. First of all, yes, there were problems with on-time delivery in the first couple of weeks. Since then, we've been achieving 99 to 100% on-time delivery on most days.
This week, just to pick you up on that, this week it was 97.3% of lunches were delivered on time. Now that sounds good, but that across the week is roughly 500,000 lunches. So that means that 13,500 meals were delivered late, which is
what we've been saying up until now. Let's stop the percentages. And so Jack is saying, Jack does something very well here as well, very good. Because the point that Jack makes as well is if these kids are going to get these lunches and these lunches are coming late, that eats into their learning time. Mr. Seymour, you are constantly talking your number one priority is to get kids learning better. But your school lunches are contributing to them not learning as well because it's interrupting their class time. And it's actually a really good angle that Jack takes.
You have 13,500 students having their learning interrupted by a government policy from a government that said that our number one priority was reading, writing and maths, getting kids focused on learning. 13,500 just this week.
So I can do mental arithmetic too. It means that actually if 13,500 out of 500,000 were late, then 586,500 were delivered on time.
Hang on. But can he do mental arithmetic? Because he just made a statement. It's a testable statement. He goes, I can do mental arithmetic. But can he? Actually, but can he do mental arithmetic? Let's see if his mental arithmetic makes sense. 500,000 meals, 13,500 weren't delivered on time. So that would be 486,500. So will he get that answer right? Can he actually do mental arithmetic? Let's see.
So I can do mental arithmetic too. It means that actually if 13,500 out of 500,000 were late, then 586,500 were delivered on time.
That's not right. So what you're proving to us is you do things to the best of your ability, which is horseshit, and you can't do mental arithmetic. So now things are starting to make sense around why you think this is so good, Mr. Seymour.
I can play this game all day, but look...
But I mean, that's every week this year, right? So that's just this week, 13,500 students have their learning interrupted, and that's every single week this year we've seen late deliveries. Yeah. So potentially hundreds of thousands of interrupted learning hours from a government that said it was focused on educational outcomes.
And what you've also seen is a starting couple of weeks where, on one day in one city, 11% were delivered on time in the first week. That's not good.
Minimize.
Best of his ability, 11% delivered on time. Best of his ability.
We're now seeing 99 to 100,000 every day. And actually, if you think about how business and how life works, not many people are delivering at 99 to 100% every day. That's what we've been doing. This week, you say it was 97.3. That's true. There was one day of interruption on Wednesday when it was only 90%.
So this shows David Seymour just lied to the country. Because what he's saying right here is, yes, you are correct. I knew it was 97.3, whereas 4 or 5 minutes ago, he was saying we're delivering 98 to 99%. And Jack said this week was 97.3. And right now he's saying, I knew it was 97.3. You're correct. So why did you tell us 99% every week? That would be can't say, are we in the house? I'm in my house. We're not in the house. That's a lie, Mr. Seymour.
Delivered on time. But again, there's two New Zealands, right? There's people who will want to nitpick and say, oh, but I've done the maths, it's 13,500, that's what 3% is, whatever. You're welcome to do that. But I tend to take the other view of life, that it's not what happens, it's how you deal with it. And actually, we've overcome all those problems to get to very high standards of performance.
Very high standards of performance, Chippy. Very high standards.
Can I just say how fucking galling it is to have someone like David Seymour with the educational experiences that he's had, with the schools that he's gone to and the upbringing that he has, be all philosophical and say, hey, look, it's not what happens, it's how you deal with it. You
That's coming.
condescending prick.
That's the next segment.
Mate.
The next segment is very much in the David seeing all the errors as a chance to show resilience. Should we just go into that, shall we?
Yep, sure thing.
If you're going to blow up, like people
I'm
are
gonna blow
already
up.
people are already saying there's a foo-foo on the way.
It's gonna happen.
Maybe a drop sheet underneath you for when the explosion happens. Maybe just thinking. All
What
right, let's keep
explosion
going.
am I going to have?
I don't know.
Well, first of all, let's just go back to your earlier point. I mean, if you're seriously saying that New Zealanders are so helpless that we can't say, look, the meals are going to be a bit late, we'll keep learning, we'll get the meals when they arrive. I mean, I think you're...
Okay, get that? We'll keep learning. We'll get the meals when they arrive. In other words, the expectation of these children is that it's lunchtime. Lunch is on here. Oh, we'll just keep working then. We'll keep
Does he know
learning.
how schools work?
And well, this is exactly almost to the word what Jack says.
Can't say, look, the meals are going to be a bit late, we'll keep learning, we'll get the meals when they arrive. I mean, I think you underestimate quite
So you
how
get the
able-
meals when they arrive, all right? You've got a class of students, meals have arrived, guys. Okay, so we stop learning, we go and have all the meals, okay? You've got you're having this one, you've got a halal meal, okay, we're doing all that, then you've got to clean it all up. That's all that time's lost learning time.
Yeah, that's...
It's not like they're cancelling lunch hour, is it?
That's how lunch works, right? Is that you
Except
actually
they're
have-
not cancelling
you
lunch
actually-
hour beforehand. So
you
you've got your lunch hour, your meal doesn't arrive, then you go back to class, you're sitting in class, oh, good news, kids, the meals have arrived, meals all come in, you go through the whole process. I mean, you don't understand how classrooms work if you can't see that that's, at the very least, incredibly distractionary.
Well,
Jack Tame, I congratulate you. Associate Minister of Education, you don't understand how classrooms work. Mr. Seymour, you do not understand how classrooms work. But now we're going to hear Mr. Seymour basically, it's like the wartime, strip off a lip at how much resilience this will build in the children having to deal with his policy balls up.
You don't understand how classrooms work if you can't see that that's, at the very least, incredibly distractionary.
well, I actually believe that people can take initiative and say we're going to move our lunch hour, for example. That's something that you could do.
Except the schools don't always know that they're going to be late, right?
Well, actually, they do. They know.
They
if
always know if they're going to be
know
late.
if
What?
They know if they've arrived. So again,
So hang on.
No, Joey. You might have missed that. When he says they know they're going to be late, his response is they know when they've arrived. So they know they're going to be late at 4 o'clock when they turn up at 4 o'clock. So that's his they know they're going to be late.
So which one is it that actually is a really small percentage of people that don't get their meals, or it happens so often that the schools know that it's going to happen? Which one?
Yep. Bingo.
Like, how do you plan for something not happening?
Yeah, well, that's the point. And obviously, remember as well, right, not every kid in the school will get a school lunch. So they can't cancel lunchtime because there's some kids who are going to be eating lunches that they bought from home. So lunchtime happens, and then Mr. Seymour's suggesting after lunchtime at 1:55 when the lunches turn up, they stop again. The kids that get those lunches then go and have this, and this is the angle that Jack took very well, which is that's just doing the opposite of what you've been claiming you want to do, which is focus on school study time because it's a disruption to it. We've only got another 30 seconds. We'll get to the end of it.
They
always know if they're going to be late.
They know if they've arrived. So again,
So hang on. So they know if they've arrived, right? So explain to me how a school can move its lunch hour before knowing if it's arrived.
Well, I'm not saying they can. I'm saying that they could be aware because, for example, and this is the two New Zealands, Jack. I mean, on the one hand,
two New Zealands, the kids who are having their learning interrupted and the kids who aren't.
No, the two New Zealands are the one where we nitpick over tiny details that you don't even know. You're just spitballing that maybe this is what happens. Or there's the one where people can say,
look, we've been speaking to educators all through this week, and I think it's been pretty widely reported, right?
There you go. That's what we're going to do for tonight on that.
Nitpicking.
As you can see. Yeah. Nitpicking.
Two
13,500
New
kids.
Zealanders. Yes, there are two New Zealands, David. There's the New Zealand where the kids don't have to worry about whether they're having 3 meals a day, and there's the New Zealand where they do. And this is just a small thing that you could do because there's mountains of evidence that children learn better when they're not hungry. It fucking makes sense, doesn't it? Is you could feed the kids. You could feed the kids and you could make it not complicated. You could make sure that all the kids got meals. And then if you're going to go to a big international company, which I recommend you don't do, one of the things is you should go, hey, do you have the experience and the capability to instantly hit the ground running with a 99% on-time edible success rate? Because that's what your government contract is. That's not what he did. That's not what the government did. The government came in and said, you got to do this for $3. We know it's impossible, but that's the line that I've been using and the line that I will continue to use, whether it's fucking true or not. David Seymour's a liar. He's lied several times in this interview. This entire program is a lie. And as someone in the chat said, they've put the fox in charge of the hen house. If you fundamentally disagree with the state's role in feeding its citizens, its young citizens in state schools, learning, then why would you put your hand up to do it? If you're fundamentally against it, because the first thing out the gate is like, you'll be half-assing this at best. That's because you wanted to sabotage it, because you're a liar.
We're going to go straight into some chats because we've still got a couple of things to get to, including how you're all going to agree with a Nazi that I'm going to play next. Peter says, congrats for getting over 16K mark on YouTube. Yep, I saw that as well. Thank you for that. Next step is 20. We need 20. If we can do, what are we now, in the third month? I mean, could we do 20 by the middle of the year? Don't know. We'll see. Seymour's brain has turned into melted plastic, says Kiwibird Gold. Says, in fairness, Seymour, worst human example of human, never claimed he could do mental arithmetic correctly. Yeah, that was pretty hilarious, wasn't it?
Just like his party slogan
is now kakete. Nor you can't resilient your way out of missing a meal. The danger of Mouse's act trying to set us up for a stupid population. After all, it worked for the USA. The Falconeer says, what about diabetics? They must have meals on time. It's a very good question. Arvid says, David knows kids need routine, right? And it's in the ballot. Said, Principal Skinner announcement. Sorry, kids, school lunches are late. You will go to period 4 instead of your lunch break, and sorry if you are hungry. Right, Chewy.
Yeah. Can you imagine being a kid that's rolling on into his next period, next class, while the rest of the school's out in the playground? How fucking bullshit is that?
Yeah. All right. So, Chewy, do you know who Nick Fuentes is?
Yep.
Nick Fuentes, for people who don't know, who is a Nazi. He debates people and he takes the position Hitler was right. Like, correct. He's actually a Nazi.
We're not overstating things.
Yeah, no.
He is a Nazi.
Yeah. And I promised that you would be agreeing with a Nazi before the end of the show, maybe for different reasons. Do you want to hear his latest take on Donald Trump?
Oh, God.
Nick Fuentes,
go on.
Avowed Nazi on Donald Trump.
This kind of stuff was cute 10 years ago. It's not cute anymore. It's just stale. This little routine, this little act he does, it's really just insulting to our intelligence at this point. It was kind of kitschy and cute and a little funny in 2015, a decade ago. But now that he keeps doing this like obnoxious fucking bullshit, whatever this routine that he's doing is, I can't tell you how sick of it I am. I'm watching him today selling Teslas in front of the White House, and he says, I'm going to get in one of these suckers. Shut the fuck up. Just shut the fuck up. I'm so sick of that. I'm so sick of this weird fucking voice he's always doing, this weird jokey joke fucking gimmick. It's just stupid. It's just stupid and embarrassing and just fucking dumb. And I can't tell you how annoying it is now. I don't know if you guys feel the same way. Maybe you guys still think it's funny. I've been on the Trump train for 10 years, and it's like, I can't take it anymore. I feel like I'm going crazy. It's just like a bad sitcom. It's like an insufferable sitcom character that does a funny gag, and they just keep going every season, and it gets more hammed up. It's like Jar Jar Binks. Trump has turned into like Jar Jar Binks of the Republican Party. He's in front of the White House. should I get in this sucker? Shut the fuck up. What the fuck are you talking about? Can you talk normally? Can you just be fucking normal for like 10 seconds?
He goes on. He then goes to say that the liberals were right about Trump anyway. I know it's a bit silly. You don't really agree with the man, but so what we're doing, we've said this a lot. We've said this about Mr. Luxon as well. Not that he's the same as Trump, is that people further to the right of these leaders, and that's what you're looking at with Trump, the leader on the right are losing those people as well. So the ACT voters, Luxon is not doing enough for them, so he's losing them. That's why his polling's in the toilets, and so you're losing it from the centre right, you're losing it from the far right, and that's why I think in New Zealand, as is in America, you're seeing the worst polling for us new government, for them new president, than you've ever seen before at this stage in an election cycle, Chewy.
As far as that clip goes, I'm going to say, like, there hasn't been, like, I want to draw a historical parallel here of just a Nazi being really late to notice that something's happening. Like, Hitler still thought he was winning the war when the Red Army was pretty much knocking at his door. Very much the same vibe. Yeah. Very much the same vibe. We're still winning this war, aren't we? Yes. That's why the Russians are shelling us in Berlin, where we live. The war is going very well. I mean, yeah, sure. Welcome to the fold. And by that, I mean, fuck off, far away from us.
But you agree with the sentiments, yes or no?
He's come to a realization that we've said right from the
You can't say it, can you? I'm not going to force you to say it.
Say it. No,
okay, that's fine. That's fine.
I'm not going to, because Nick Fuentes is a horrible person.
Agreed.
To his, I think, at a molecular level, and the only way we can find that out is to break him down into individual molecules and study him.
Hey, we're going to jump into the last story, because the last story is actually quite a big story, but we're not going to give it the due credit it needs tonight. We will visit it.
No, we can do it in 5 minutes. Let's go.
We can't do it in 5 minutes. It's about free speech, and we are going to visit free speech later on this week as well. But because the thing about this is, I need to show you video. I'm not going to show you the whole video because it's 8.5 minutes. But Mahmoud Khalil, who is the pro-Palestinian voice in America, who is being, we think, removed from America, even though he's a green card holder. Zateo over the weekend got their hands on his arrest video. I mean, yeah.
Turn around. Okay, let's not. Okay, he's not resisting. He's giving me his phone, okay? He's not, I understand. He's not resisting. Like,
don't worry about it. You're going to have to come with us. Don't worry. I'm coming with you. Don't worry. No one's resisting. No one's getting worked up.
And we will kind of jump through it a little bit because I've watched the whole thing through. They get out into, and the I'm not sure who the woman is who's videoing, but she's obviously distraught. She's talking to someone else.
It's his wife.
It is actually his wife? Okay. She's talking to someone else on the phone, and she's distraught. Doesn't know what to do. Follows him out.
what's your name?
And then she's trying to get the names of the people arresting. She's trying to get where he's going. The lawyer on the phone wants to speak to them all, and none of them will speak to her. So actually, he is taken away in the car, and she doesn't know where he's going. And they won't tell her. And the lawyer doesn't know.
She said they're taking him to 26 Federal Plaza.
And apparently when the lawyer turned up to the location she got told they were at, he wasn't there.
Please? Excuse me.
He ended up being in a completely different state within 2 days. This is a US green card holder being black bagged in the middle of the night.
Yep.
The lawyer would like to speak to somebody. Oh my God, they're literally running away from me.
So as I said, I mean, I'll try and put the link in the show notes. I'm not going to see the whole thing because we want to go on and talk about this. There's obviously lots of conversations around this, the human rights issue, the squashing of free speech issue, the, as you just say, Chewy, kidnapping a legal resident in America and saying we're going to get rid of you even though you've got legal residency here because of the things we don't like. The angle we're going to have a look at tonight, Humanist Report did a really good wrap up of a whole bunch. We're not going to show all of their stuff, but a whole bunch of people on the right who are sorry, I was going to stop that. Who are all of a sudden, Chewy, it's not about free speech anymore. It's almost like they've changed their perspective 180 degrees based on what was politically advantageous to them. So this is a clip. I'm using several clips from the Humanist Report here. This is Humanist Report just showing when Ben Shapiro was an advocate for free speech.
Shapiro has emerged as one of the top defenders of free speech.
There's speech I don't like, there's speech you don't like, but if we can't agree that there is a difference between speech and violence, we're not going to be able to have a free state, let alone a free country. There's a big part of the left, and it's growing, that says that it is incumbent to protect the campus from ideas that are dissenting, and everyone who dissents must be thrown off.
So that's where he was. Where he is now is this is his response to the wife, I think, on Twitter.
In response to Mahmoud's wife complaining about how her husband was effectively kidnapped by the U.S. government, Ben Shapiro responded saying, "No, you see, kidnapping is what Hamas does. You remember, it's the thing Mahmoud Khalil celebrates." Moves on to another part of the conversation. With and this is the Humanist Report we're seeing right now, Mike Figueredo, sorry, and he makes the point that going by Ben Shapiro's new criteria about supporting a terrorist voice, which is not what Mahmoud was doing, but if it was, then maybe Ben Shapiro should be careful about an arrest coming his way. Would be justified in kidnapping him, since Israel, the country that Ben Shapiro supports, has kidnapped approximately 9,000 Palestinian hostages, including hundreds of children. We go on as well. Some more conversations around what Ben Shapiro is up to, what he has said, all of a sudden trying to move away. Because remember, all that Mahmoud has done is spoken, literally just speaking out for Palestinian voices, speaking out for the bombing happening in Gaza. That's what he's done. He is a pro-Palestinian protester. And what the right's trying to do is turn away from free speech, even though it's a clear-cut case. On Facebook, he writes, Columbia University student Mahmoud Khalil was the first to be arrested by Homeland Security agents for his participation in pro-Palestinian demonstrations on campus, which, by the way, is not a crime. Yeah. So he's actually acknowledging it's free speech, was participating in pro-Palestinian demonstrations on campus. Okay, clear cut. This is protected speech under the First Amendment, even if you don't like it. He continues, President Trump vowed he would not be the last. The media is trying to spin this as an attack on free speech, but this isn't about protesting. It's about aiding and abetting terrorist sympathizers on American soil. This goes on. This guy's name is Dan Crenshaw. He's a congressman or a senator, and we wanted him. He was on Piers Morgan on Friday, I think, with our mate Mehdi. And this clip is also from Mike's channel. When Dan Crenshaw was on Rogan talking about how important free speech is.
I do think you have an American obligation to actually adhere to free speech standards and to adhere to the same standards that the government adheres to, which is your speech is not protected if it incites violence directly. It's a pretty clear. And we've just had Ben Shapiro actually say he was participating in pro-Palestinian protests. The definition of speech. Your standard. Yes. Everything else is entirely vague, and it only leads to a slippery slope. Now, Mehdi Hassan was on with Dan Crenshaw on, I think, Friday, our time. I'm going to play two clips here. One of the clips is only a few seconds long. The reason I'm playing it is because Mehdi Hassan says, fuck me. And I think it's hilarious to hear Mehdi Hassan say, fuck me. But the first part about it is these guys debating as to who and what has happened with Mahmoud. Sorry, I haven't got this quite queued up yet. 45, 23. Because this is, and what I'm trying to show you is the spin from the right. The spin from the right actually goes beyond the people on the right, because the people on the right are trying to sell a narrative that the White House won't even adhere to. Let's have a listen to this.
What Khalil's statements actually were. Quote, we are Westerners fighting for the total eradication of Western civilization. Our intifada is an internationalist one. We are fighting for nothing less than the liberation of all people. So this is an incitement to violence, very clearly so. If you're looking,
that's a statement from a group he was part of.
Yeah. So okay. So here's the law. You're right. Sorry. That is correct. Now here's the law that we're referencing. You said he broke no laws, but it's Section 8 U.S. Code 1227. Being a representative of a political or social group that endorses or espouses terrorist activity is against the law. And
so the overarching thing around this, and we all know this, is they're saying if you are pro-Palestinian, if you are pro people of Gaza not being blown up, then by definition you're pro-Hamas. We know they do this. This is the latest incarnation of it, and it's causing legal residents in America to be black bagged, as Chewy said.
a violation of your the social contract of having that visa. That's the argument. There isn't some. This isn't some McCarthyism. This isn't some vague issue. How is it false? I just read to you the actual U.S. code.
Like this is. I'll tell you. No,
not true according to who?
I can tell you how it's false because
just quietly. If you ever doubt anyone is going to have receipts, it's always Mehdi Hassan.
According to the White House, Dan, according to the White House went to the Free Press yesterday. You should check your facts before you come on and defend the White House. The White House went to the Free Press and said, we're not accusing him of breaking any laws. So Congressman Dan Crenshaw is coming on TV making wild accusations of law breaking based on a quote that's not from Mahmoud Khalil.
Well, they're not wild
accusations.
It's just referencing the law.
They are. Well, hold on. Hold on, you're wrong, Dan. First, accept that you're wrong. The White House said to the Free Press, Barry Weiss's right-wing Free Press, this week, we are not accusing him of breaking any laws. In fact, if you want to understand the laws, you need to look at the Immigration National Act of 1952. They're actually taking him into deportation proceedings under Section 237A4CI, which allows Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, to personally deport a migrant because he believes that migrant's presence has serious potential adverse consequences for U.S. foreign policy. That is the obscure act, which, by the way, was designed for Eastern European Jews to get rid of them because they were deemed to be communists in the 1950s. That is what Rubio is using to get rid of a lawful permanent resident. Now, whether that's legal or not, Trump's late sister, Judge Marion Trump-Barry, said it was a violation of the First Amendment. We'll see if the Supreme Court gets involved. But the idea that we should live in a country where Marco Rubio or Antony Blinken can remove a green card holder because he doesn't like his views and they're against U.S. foreign policy, some nebulous aim, that's outrageous. And there was a time when the Republican Party would have been against that, but not today.
So there's that. I've got a couple more clips. I need to remind myself of what they are. Oh, no, that's Alan Dershowitz. I was going to play Alan Dershowitz because Alan Dershowitz evokes this case in Skokie. Skokie in America had the famous case where Nazis, again, literal, wanted to march and protest in Skokie. And of course, nobody wanted them to. So the ACLU went to court on behalf of the Nazis because it was just a free speech issue. Like nobody wanted to support them in their views, but it was this appearance. And the reason I was going to bring that up, which we won't talk about now, was I have a bit of an interest in that case because the guy who actually took that case was David Goldberger. And I've done a podcast with him to hear all the history behind Skokie and what happened there. Now, I will say this as well. This is from yonks ago. So as you can see, a massive 129 views. If you watch that from me, you may hear some things from me that you're a bit like, well, that sounds a little bit kind of centrist or whatever. This is happening now as well. This is an important thing to remember, is that if nothing else in this show, we are consistent. You know, we often get things thrown at us from the right, like, oh, did you condemn the guy punching the old lady at the Parky Po? And we're like, yeah. We're consistent. What's happening at the moment, and I'll say this about the left and the right, the left at the moment are jumping up and down about free speech because of what's happening in America. But you need to be honest as well. Some on the left right now who are jumping up and down in favor of free speech because of what's happening in America, a little while ago were perhaps saying something that sounded a bit opposite. Some people on the right who right now are jumping up and down about issues and trying to claim not free speech were a little while ago were doing the opposite. So when this tribal thing comes in, and at the moment in America, the left are for free speech and the right are against it, when the table turns and the right become for free speech and the left are, this doesn't work. This tribal thing doesn't work in these conversations. Consistency works. The problem with consistency is sometimes it's uncomfortable and sometimes you have to agree with, abide by, be in the same court as people you may not be that comfortable with. This is a little side note that I've been thinking about today, because I listened to some of the Goldberg conversation that I had, and I'm like, well, that sounds interesting, because ACLU is very, very, very much gone to the far left, which is cool. I don't care about that, but you can see on their front page, rather than defending the right for Nazis to speak, it is a lot of real far left views, which is cool. Whatever, you do you, boo. But if for example, the ACLU stood up for Nazis today, or it'll be all hell to pay, because they've taken a narrative and they've gone with it. It's going to be uncomfortable sometimes, like in a free speech situation, supporting the speech of people who you may not agree with, but the tribal nature of it sometimes comes to play. And when you get tribal about it, it's very easy to look like a hypocrite, because all of a sudden, when it's not your tribe to defend, you don't defend them. I think I'm finished, Joey. That was a bit of a rant there, but you know what I'm saying? Do you want to add to that, Joey?
That's a very rare Pat rant. But
it wasn't a foo-foo. It was just a controlled rant. There was no foo-foo.
I just want to just a couple of things, because I know we'll dive deeper into this story tomorrow. But this example of a green card holder in the US, I guess their equivalent of our sort of like permanent resident type thing, being black bagged.
Yeah,
close to, right?
Yeah.
He's not the only one. There's a doctor from Germany. There's a Canadian tourist who has been in a detention center for almost a month now, because they can't work out whether doing housework at the place that she was staying counts as work. There are people being deported to countries they're not from. There are people being deported to countries where they don't speak the language. There are people being deported for social media posts. Like, this is real concerning.
According to US laws, green card holders are people who have been granted the right to live permanently in the country. However, this is subject to the condition they don't commit any crimes or violations that could make them deportable under immigration law.
Cool. So going to a protest, not a crime.
That's what they're saying. That's what they're making. They're saying going to a protest is now supporting a terrorist. That this is their tacit, tie up in knots to try and get the link to ram that square into that circle, is that attending the protest, speaking at the protest, being the organizer of a protest, is a direct support of a terrorist organization. That's the quote unquote crime.
This is why the left needs to stop fiddling and trying to be in the middle, because the right gives no such leeway when they're in control. Look, this and the reports of it led to me cancelling my plans to go to the US next year. I had hoped, but I am not going to end up in an ICE detention center on the border for the capital crimes of memes and supporting Palestine.
Yeah.
Like that's how wide they're casting this net, and I'm just not going to risk it. US can do a regime change if they want me to come over. The other thing I want to say is the Crenshaw guy. There was a comment here. Why is that man dressed like a pirate? I just want to highlight this fact. He's a combat veteran. He served overseas.
He lost his eye.
He lost his eye in a war zone. All of that sort of thing. Here is how I am going to sum up his character right now. He is part of the government that is scrubbing information about Medal of Honor holders, winners, people that have served wearing the same uniform that he has served the same country that he has served, and their historical footprint is being scrubbed because they are non-white. They are not straight white men, so they're being scrubbed from the historical record.
All women. I saw a picture of a woman standing in front of a bomber jet the other day, and I think it was called something like the gay something, like, because back then they're happy.
Enola Gay.
And they're the Enola Gay, and they're scrubbing that stuff as well.
Yeah. They scrubbed the first black general to win a Congressional Medal of Honor, just Medal of Honor, that he won in combat in Vietnam. Not a peep out of these guys. Trump's and Elon Musk is scrubbing grants and assistance to the Veterans Administration to help out combat veterans, just like him, he's not piping up about them at all. So if you want to look at the very moral fiber of a person, the fact that he's not sticking up for fellow servicemen against the deep cuts and disrespect that Trump's regime is directing at American servicemen, there you have it. The guy's a scumbag.
I was about to ruin your world. Shall I ruin your world?
I'll go on.
Completely finish that topic now. I'm going to ruin your world.
What else is it?
Ruin your world.
Oh, I see the preview.
Chris Bishop.
Yes.
She had.
Okay. So, I am told by a friend of mine that was at Homegrown. They played a little clip of prominent New Zealanders in a video before they went on, just thanking Shihad for the decades of music. And there are people that are fans of Shihad. What I have heard is when Chris Bishop came up on screen, everybody there booed so loud. So loud. Look, it is one of Chris Bishop's only redeeming features is that he likes Shihad. But yeah. Sorry, my dude. No, not sorry. Not sorry. Not sorry at all.
Sorry, not sorry. Not sorry.
You can't listen to Shihad. Not allowed. Banned.
What I was trying to do, I was on Facebook because I was bored. No, I was bored because I was trying to download something because I've got a little something to show people. I just want to make sure there's no characteristics on here that I'm going to expose anybody. Don't think so. So how about this? This has just been sent through to me from upstairs, actually. There's a sticker in the works. There's a sticker in the works. That seems pretty fun.
Yay.
Speaking of, shall I show you something else out of my inbox? I haven't asked permission to do this, and I'm sure the person who sent it to me will be fine. I'm thinking of another T-shirt. I'm going to try and perhaps speak to a certain person who may well be interested in what we're doing. Steve sent me an image, and I just think maybe we can see a T-shirt in this.
Put it in the preview. Oh, that's so good.
Like that?
That's so good. If I get control of the sticker machine, I promise you that it will be a photorealistic butthole, and then it will just say Seymour is an asshole. Like there's no need for subtlety at this point.
Like that one with Luxon on Trade Me that looked like he was stuck inside someone's asshole.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Do you want control? I see you've got the thing up before we go. We're very long.
Oh, yeah. No, like just there's some images that just stick in your head. Do you want to see what it looks like to be a person being deported from the US at the moment?
Okay. Whoa. Why the need? Are you sure that's from? Is this the Venezuelans? Because they shave their heads. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So that's part of it. I think it's El Salvador, isn't it?
They're sending them to El Salvador. Yeah.
Yeah.
But the courts told them to
be put in a mega prison.
Yeah, and the courts told them to turn the planes around and bring them back, and I think they ignored them.
Yeah. So this got published today. So this is what this means. These are people from generically South America, and they're all being sent to El Salvador or some country. They're being paid. The Americans are paying them to put them in prison, and the prison that they're being sent to, they are worked. So it is a work camp mega prison. Yeah, but that's one of those images. Like the other images that I think the photos that came out of Abu Ghraib in Iraq, you're just like, oh, you're not the goodies.
Yeah,
you're not the good guys.
Now it's on their soil. Okay, I am going to make an apology. I have had a busy day today. I know I haven't done shout outs to our new patrons. We'll do that tomorrow night. I don't have the new patrons in the credits yet. That'll be tomorrow night. And remember, and I realize even though I'm sure you guys all know, remember, just bear with me. Talk amongst yourselves. I'm not just going to be a minute. There it is. Remember, if you want to get in while you can now, bhnshop.nz. Specifically for the new merch is there as well. Tax work less, tax wealth more. I'm calling it, what's that, white print on black and black print on white, and t-shirts and hoodies. And we have got limited numbers this run. There's still quite a few, but as I said at the start of the show, it may not be there now. It may have already sold, but at the start of the show, there was only one large black t-shirt left. But I realized after I said I wasn't going to do a hard push that I didn't even mention the shop address, bhnshop.nz, if you want to go and have a look. And I still think, Chewy, even though I love the new gear, I still think the orange Chewbacca is the best one. I love that so much. It is,
objectively, scientifically. Also, if you get lost in the bush, helicopters find you easier.
If you get lost in the bush, the International Space Station could find you in that thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Oh, look, there's a ton of chats. I'm sorry, guys. It's been such a busy night, and I'm sorry I'm not going to give these the credit they deserve. So thank you for all of your super chats. Let's just get them up, shall we? Principal Rimmer says, Mr. Arvids, Kai Tuhi, laminated faced cunt. Mr. Arvids again, bro, WTF, Gary, economics is so right. Trump is going to lose unless they fix wealth inequality and they'll go further right. Well, they're not going to fix that, so that would mean that he's going to lose, according to you. MAGA winning until it's me, says the danger of mouse. The POM Jewish protest at Trump Tower to free Mahmoud. Yeah, and I had a clip on that as well with Laura Ingraham saying they should all be rounded up and deported. The Jewish communities, yeah. So
they could put them on trains to get. Oh, Jesus Christ!
And send them to a camp, like you send your dead dog to the farm up country. They could be a camp up country, and everyone would be happy. Free speech and providing a platform are different. I agree, Peter. Jeremy's just $2, and then Jeremy's $2 for the late fee. That's it. All right, team. It's been a big night. Huge thanks again to Chris Hipkins for joining us. We've got Byron coming up at some stage. We haven't locked out. It could be tomorrow night. If not tomorrow night, it could be Wednesday night. So we will figure that out as we go through. Thank you so much for being a part of what we do. Thank you for being with us tonight.
Help us settle a debate, whether it be thoughtful or funny, even if we're all creatures of hate. It's a fine line that we're walking together. For better, push aside the temptation to berate. Let's take a note of the corners we stand in. As many points as the hairs on my chinny chin chin. When the news that we're watching is hairy, knowing all the things that we need to be wary of. Like the rich have the hand out for rewards, while the many have to work at what they can't afford. And the rest of us ain't paying attention, or maybe have questions we're too worried to mention. Other media is still dwelling on trivial facts, vetting peas from the rice and the mice from the rats, and picking and choosing a war path to run, and linking ourselves with the hill to die on. It's gotta come down to a welcoming vibe, with an A and a self and a higher in mind. All heavily, neither this way or that, and we'll be analyzed by what Chewy and Pat. With the evil in the world trying to mess with your head, and you're sitting on the couch, you're thinking chivalry's dead. Each night, 2 nights, they're gonna sing you to bed. It's Big Hairy News.
All right, whānau, that's us. Back tomorrow night from 9 p.m. for another edition of Big Hairy News. Might have a look at if there's any more information about Seymour in that Q&A program. I don't think there's very much else, but whatever, Squiz, what's going on? Anything from you, Chewy?
Just this comment. Worst chair dancing ever. That's just because
sorry.
you can't see my footwork. That's where all of the effort goes. And I'm not doing a camera down there because I don't give away my feet for free.
Yeah, but on his OnlyFans, Chewy Feet at OnlyFans, you'll find some big hairy photos.
Some of the hairiest toes you've ever seen.
All right, whānau, we'll catch you tomorrow night from 9 p.m. for another edition of Big Hairy News. Hooroo, team.
Cheers, fam.